Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We welcome you to make yourself comfortable as we go over the current state of the world and our nation. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to at least watch the first episode to have a proper introduction to our conversations. These conversations are not otherwise happening in any sequential order. Please be aware that we expect you to behave with honor in our comment section. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all the nations around the world. This is not a marketing or sales podcast, and we are not sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron, and if you say that you are a sovereign citizen, you are a moron. A sovereign is a free and honorable living man or woman who operates under God's law, under natural law, and who honors themselves and others in peace. One definition for the word citizen is slave, but there are different kinds of citizens. Putting those two words together is an oxymoron. Please do not promote or condone TikTok, Facebook, or any other social media games to test the system or to impose your beliefs onto society at large. Again, this is not a marketing and promoting like a promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you, and we are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We are interested in helping you reclaim your birthright and your inheritance. We are not sitting in judgment of you. This information is a beacon of light for you to use when you choose to seek it. We have marshals at arms that are designated as moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Please be kind with your words. We're also on multiple platforms. Everybody can't see all the comments, so be aware of that. And if you diminish others, you will be put in a timeout or deleted and blocked as deemed necessary. If you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with our North Carolina Marshal at Arms, Cynthia Pinkston, and now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Good morning, Anna.
Hi, guys. How are you all this morning?
Ready to go.
We've already been running half of our day over here, Anna, while you were hopefully getting some sleep. I don't know if you got any sleep last night.
Well, it seems like I pretty much have to keep my phone on so that I can keep up with the world events. And sometimes I wish I didn't. sometimes I wish I just slept.
You need like an overnight secretary. You need a night shift person.
I do. And sometimes Shannon does that for me.
Yeah.
But he has been working very hard himself, and it's just been very difficult. I do have a multiple phone system so that people can relay to me also.
Sure.
But it just makes it hard because things are going on all over the world, and of course there are vast differences in our time zones, and so this is just part of the craziness of being involved in international affairs.
I'm really glad that we're talking about this morning because I wanted to begin the show today with, I feel like we try to do our best, Anna, in serving you by helping you keep a pulse on the ground with boots on the ground because you're doing such big work internationally. Someone, first of all, had the audacity to ask me how did I know you were real and not a bot? So for those of you watching right now, we know she's real. Because I know that she's been working all night long. Nobody can do what Anna's doing. Like there's no bot that can do the work that Anna's doing. And let's just talk a little bit about what your actual job is. I wanted people to understand. And the reason that I want to make this clear for a lot of folks is because Anna, we do this show and people are saying this is what the average somebody on the ground is thinking this way. The way people are thinking is this. Hey, I used to be like a Montana free man and as a 16-year-old, I was there during the standoffs, and you got to be careful what the sovereign movement do, because there's a lot of bad actors in it. And, people will go to jail, because they just don't pay taxes and they try to exercise their sovereign rights. Someone else said, it's really getting ugly on the political front right now. And it might come to more civil disobedience leading to war in America. And you have to be careful and double check everything that you're listening to. Get the proof. And then someone else said, well, my mom spread that stuff for years and was paid heavily. My dad ultimately died in the terrorist division of Terre Haute Indian Penitentiary a couple of years ago. The government will do anything to protect the law system, and enacted and enforced, and it wouldn't matter what color you are. And it was used in my case after Waco and Ruby Ridge. And then, so there's all of these stories. I'm just reading things like off that people have sent to me, random stuff. They're just like, you got to be careful, because you got to have proof. You got to have proof. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? And so when they say that to me, what I really like to be able to do, Anna, is, for example, recently there was the situation on the border of Texas. And so it's easy for me to pull the situation, clips about what's going on the border of Texas. And then I bombard them with your immediate, like whatever those 5-6 emails, your articles that you post that are in reaction to the situation, where you are creating an international diplomatic situation so that you can push people back into their box. And I explained to them, look, the pen is mightier than the sword. So maybe you can speak a little bit more about this incredible work that you do, because people just don't understand how you're doing that. And I try to show them. I might not do as good of a job as you might be able to help us explain. So would you mind speaking about that a little bit?
Well, I don't fearmonger, but I certainly advise people to do their own due diligence, look up the citations, look at the court cases, look at the history themselves, learn it for themselves, because the only way they can really defend themselves is if they do know it. And I mean really know it. And so I think that the most prevalent problem we have, the greatest ignorance we have, the danger that lurks in the situation is ignorance. I mean, 90% of it that I've seen has been simply that we didn't know what our employees were doing. And so we were unable to respond appropriately to what they were doing. But now we know. And knowing that gives us a great deal of leverage and advantage in the situation. Because actually, our courts have concurrent general jurisdiction, and it's superior concurrent general jurisdiction with regard to the subject matter, meaning us and our assets. We haven't been able to deploy that power because we haven't been providing ourselves with our own courts. So we actually hold the bigger hammer. We just didn't know that number one, we didn't know we needed a hammer. Number two, we didn't know that we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing. We didn't know what our employees were pulling off behind our backs. But now that we do, now we're in the driver's seat to a much greater extent than we ever dreamed possible, because simply our courts overstand their courts once they're formed and we're standing.
I think that most people still have no idea that I always try to start. We had our weekend. Our outreach program was this Saturday. We do it every first Saturday of the month. And we always have a great turnout. And I mean, it's a small turnout, but it's consistent. It's like a consistent group of new people and some old people. And they come every month. And we do a little bit of and we do always start with an intro, and then we do a little extra education, and then we do Q&A. And it's really nice to see now that's been a year, Anna, since we've been doing it every month. And we consistently are bringing in at least 10 or 15 more people every month as a side effect of it. It's a nice organic way from just our one county. That doesn't count all the other counties in North Carolina that are doing, their hard work. But it's really interesting, that they're gaining confidence by the consistency. And it is exactly like what you're saying. We just have to shine the light on the path, do the education. And, some of these people come here for 6-7 months in a row before they do anything. And they're doing their own research in the background. And then they bring their questions. And it's just a consistent little thing that's, an ongoing process. So hopefully.
That's what you want.
Yeah. We just feel like, and sometimes it can become frustrating because we want to be able to just show the result of the court, for example, or whatever is happening. And it's just taking time. Like, it's taking time all the states currently are like toddlers, and we're trying to just stand up, and then get in the chair. Just got to find our seat.
Well, yeah. And you have to remember that we have all grown up in a different system. So we have to learn our own system. And we're constantly kind of falling backward into assumptions about this because of what we've already experienced in what I'll call the human slave system.
It's what it is. It's the corporatocracy, friends. The corporatocracy. I tell them, because people come in very upset with their government, and I'm like, wait a minute, let's just identify the bad guy. We are the government, and the corporatocracy is who you think is the government is the corporatocracy. So let's identify the bad guy, and let's be very clear about that. And it is literally a constant repeating. I remember in our early days with the assembly, then, every week they would say, what are the 4 pillars? What are the 4 pillars? Every week we'd start the meeting out with, what are the 4 pillars? And I think it took a good 6 weeks before people could just spit them out finally. Finally, there was always somebody who would be like, okay, we can do it. And then now it's like, we know the 4 pillars. That's nothing. Here, let us just throw it at you. Simple. But it feels strange that you have to learn your ABCs, and then start to spell the words. It can get very frustrating.
Well, yeah, it is. And you would think that we would have learned this when we were in school, but the U.S. only teaches U.S. stuff. It doesn't teach American stuff. And I keep telling people, when I was a kid growing up, we had an American history book and we had a U.S. history book. And there were 2 different subjects and 2 different books and 2 different years. It couldn't be any clearer that these were not the same subject. Even though there were things that intersected between the 2, there was a distinction made in the mind, and the material was different. And so we learned American history as American history and United States history separately. So it was obvious to us that there were 2 things going on, or 2 governments that were meshing together, and that we've lost that.
Also, there's this vision, there's this idea that they go away, they get killed off or something. And it's like, no, we're going to work together. Maybe you can speak a little bit more about that.
I think that anything that is precious, such as freedom, such as abundance, somebody is always going to try to take it away from you and exert power over you. In this case, they don't have any right to do any of it because they are literally our employees. And, they'll try to justify what they've done in terms of war. They'll say, oh, well, there was a war situation and it was an emergency and we had to take over and restore order and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, there are two things referring to the American Civil War when all this started. Number one, we call it the American Civil War, but it wasn't a war. It was a mercenary conflict. And just like Vietnam was not a war, technically it was a mercenary conflict. And it's the same thing with the Civil War. All the wars that we've been involved in from the Civil War onward have been mercenary conflicts. They're not wars. They're not owed the dignity of the law of war or the law of peace. They are undeclared by the proper body that is required to declare a war, in our case, and they don't have a proper peace process either. For a war to be a war in this country, the Congress has to declare it. And it has to be the right Congress because there are several Congresses. That's another thing that we're not taught in school. So the right Congress has to declare the war. There has to be a formal declaration. And at the end of it, there has to be a peace process that includes all three jurisdictions, air, land, and sea. And repeatedly, we do not see that. And we certainly don't see that in the Civil War. So the Civil War was not a war. It was a mercenary conflict. And as a result of that, the military doesn't have a leg to stand on to say that, we took this land by conquest, or we occupied this land under the conditions of war. They didn't. What they did is they came in and they took over in 1863, and they never told their employers what was happening. They never made a clean breast of it. They never were honest with the public. And as a result, everything else has happened as it's happened. So the bottom line is that our military and our political system went rogue, and we weren't even aware of it. We were so unaware of it that it took 100 years or 150 years before we started waking up and realizing that, hey, something is wrong. We're being told this and we're experiencing that. And the disconnect really became obvious. And you mentioned earlier the Montana Freeman. Well, in the course of my work and research into this whole venue, I've known a lot of people that were viciously suppressed by the government using military powers and presumptions, thinking that, oh yeah, well, you're a rebel, as if there were still rebels from the Civil War wandering around advocating slavery, And this is what they've used, is that they've used the excuse that you were in insurrection or rebellion against the government, meaning themselves instead of meaning the actual government. And they're really the ones that are insurrection. They're the ones that are in insurrection. And so it's this kind of misunderstanding. And the military has been just as deluded and kept in the dark as anybody else. The rank and file doesn't know this. I've often said that, if our guys knew that they were signing up to be mercenaries, a lot of them wouldn't sign up, and those that did would be getting a lot more money. So it's not a war, and it was never a war. It's a mercenary conflict, and as a result, they can't claim any special powers. They can't claim any victory. They cannot claim that they're doing anything but an illegal and immoral action by continuing to occupy this country in peacetime and to basically pillage and plunder the people here.
we need to know that we're at peacetime. I think some of it is just, there's this disconnection. They not only did they stop teaching American and U.S. history, those two subjects, they also stopped teaching logic and reason, Anna. They also stopped teaching script, manuscript, like proper manuscript.
Yeah.
There's all of these things that these are like the basic requirements for maturing into adulthood. And really taking, because, when you're a child, there's a lot of things that seem scary. There's no reason once you become a grown man or a grown woman that you don't realize, okay, you have discernment, you have logic, you have reason. You can see things in a different light. So,
well, a lot of people have lost that unless their families taught them.
Well, the families would have had to work really hard because they would have to be pressing against all the institutions between political correctness and all this other nonsense that has been imposed on Americans. We weren't allowed to be Americans anymore, and they have effectively treated us as the municipal and territorial dual citizens that they turned us into, isn't it?
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah.
That's what they claim. It doesn't happen to be true.
Right. And how many people out there think that they're American? And, it's the lies and immorality again, Anna.
Well, yeah. Well, all they can do is lie because the truth condemns them.
So everyone who is feeling, when you guys are out there, you can identify the lies. The lies make you feel like you're swimming upstream. The lies make you feel like you have a boot on your neck. The truth, a lot of people can't receive this truth, Anna, because they just feel like it's too simple. It's too easy. It's a trick, and it's not a trick, friends. This is the thing. We're just going to stay here and shine the light every week. Every week, we're just going to keep shining the light because this is what they need. They just aren't believing. It's just too good to be true. But if you start reading Anna's work and turn the television off, if you start walking outside and put your feet firmly on the ground and connect, with infinite intelligence and the power of our planet by grounding, then you can learn a lot faster. You can see a lot more clearly.
Yes, and it will save you and your family and your property a whole lot if you do. It will save your country if you wise up and learn how to do what you need to do, which is basically to restore your own government.
This is where people get lost, Anna. This is what me and Cynthia were talking about. We were talking this morning about everybody who gets excited, who's like, wait a minute, this is a solution. We can try to come in. When they get ready to take the action, there's this confusion, right, Cynthia?
Well, we're looking at this process with the election stuff, and we have not got to that point of publishing in the newspaper our elections. We haven't got to that point. We've got more confusion trying to figure out between the state court process and the county court. Now, I understand that the state court will be held on the county, so the jurisdiction, we understand that. But there's still parts of that, as in who's going to have the jurisdiction to do an arrest. Somebody walks in with like a grenade in their hand. Who arrests someone in the state court? We're having these questions of who is it, the bailsman? Is it the bondsman? Which one? Because the county sheriff, and trying to figure out whose place, who does what, and there's just all of these people, and one group says one thing, another group says another thing. So it's like, okay.
This is the problem when you're writing business manuals for something that you have never done. You're trying to write the processes for your business before you've ever done the business. And it's kind of, this is the frustration a lot of people are feeling on the ground.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. We have a concurrent responsibility, both at the state and county level, to prevent crime. So if someone is violating a state law, it's incumbent upon the county to recognize that and arrest them. And it's incumbent on the state, if they run across somebody who's violating a known county law, if they know that the law is being broken, it's upon us to stand up and support the law. But typically, a county law will be in the nature of a local law, and the county sheriff will be the one to actually enforce it together with his deputies, and he can deputize as many people as he needs. Same thing at the state level. If a state law is being violated, then you have the state militias, you've got the state trooper type, whatever you call it in your particular state, you got your state police, and you also have your National Guard.
So we only have the two laws: do no harm and do unto others as you want others to do unto you.
That's the essence of the law. Because in our system, you have to have an injured party, and you have to have something specific that happened that injured them. It either was an assault upon their person, their body, or it was an assault upon their property. And so yeah, we have a very simple law.
Would the jurisdiction be established based on if you're, like, let's say you're sitting in Wake County and it's a Wake County guy and a Wake County guy, that makes it local county. If it's a Wake County person and a Buncombe County person, then that makes it state?
No. Think about it in very simple terms. Somebody's murdered. It doesn't really matter what county they're in. Murder is a crime at the county level, and it's a crime at the state level. It's just a crime, period, at all. And so it doesn't matter, the Continental Marshals, the state troopers, the county sheriff. Everybody piles on, and they go, "No, this isn't going to happen here." Now, under our law, if it's one of our people, justice is swift and draconian. You're caught in the act murdering someone, you get killed. Boom. And it really doesn't matter if it's on the spot or if it's after a trial. It's going to have the same result. So don't get caught diddling our kids. Don't get caught, raping and killing our women or anything like that. We'll just haul off and whammo, you'll be up a tree faster than Jack Sprat, because that's the way our law is. That's how draconian our law is. Back in the day when they caught up with cattle rustlers, they didn't sit around and have a big trial and wait for 6 months and, have huge defense efforts and have all this death row pleading stuff that prolongs cases for dozens of years. No, if you're caught red-handed doing something that's a capital crime, justice is served on the spot by any group of. The way it goes is similar to what was shown in Lonesome Dove. If anybody, these old westerns are golden for these sorts of things.
Yeah. I mean, Grandma could have done it right there. She'd been like, enough of this. We got to go. We got dinner.
you know,
Wow.
and so that's how, they call it Western justice or Old West style or whatever. But actually, that was what we were like throughout the country. I mean, it's true that there were some crimes in the Western states like cattle rustling that are not common in the East. But if somebody got caught cattle rustling in the East, it'd be the same basic law, the same basic punishment. And, we had a much more stable, much more sane, and much more responsible society as a result, because we didn't have all this legalistic hair splitting and procedure and process and rules and all this foo-foo-rah that the lawyers have benefited themselves from. Because you have to realize that when they take on all of this stuff, they're getting paid every step of the way. So they want all of this procedure and process and all these different, very European stuff. They want that because they make more money at it.
They just want all the tripwires. It's the lies and immorality that is exhausting. We're like, we are busy. We need to get on with the day. There's things going on.
Hannah, you used the word police. We know that the de facto has a police force. Can you speak going forward when we get stood up? Are we going to have a police force?
Well, what we're going to have are peacekeeping forces, and we have to train ourselves, me too, to say peacekeeping. But I think people get confused. Police are there to arrest humans. And becoming aware of the European caste system and how that works and how we have been subjected to it when we should be free of it, you have to become aware that there are men and women who are living people, right? And then there are males and females that are in the second class status of humans. And then there are slaves. And slaves are, in this particular system, regarded as corporations, as if you were IBM, right? And so what they've done is entrap and redefine us as humans and as slaves. And then they've applied foreign law to us, because there's a different law for people and humans and things, corporations. And so here we are, Americans, assuming that we are owed the law of living people, the land law, right? And instead, our political status has been jury-rigged and re-engineered by our public employees to create what they call federal dual citizenship. And they basically came in and helped themselves to our political status as men and women and denigrated us as humans and slaves. Now, throughout your lives, you've heard a great deal about human rights and civil rights. Well, there's a third kind of right that you haven't heard very much about, and that is natural and unalienable right. Living people have natural and unalienable or unalienable rights. Okay, we can't get rid of those rights even if we tried. All right, so that's what we're supposed to have, and the law that goes with it, which is American common law in our case. Okay, that's what we're supposed to have access to, and that's what we're supposed to be living under. And that's what we do live under, as long as we provide ourselves our own courts.
Follow up. So we're working on our sheriff's handbook and our sheriffs, and would it be appropriate to say that they could get up with the peacekeeping task force and look for training and information underneath that peacekeeping task force for what's coming in the future, to get training and materials and so forth to put that together?
The peacekeeping task force has a role that isn't really well understood by a lot of Americans, because it's something that is new. We haven't had anything that was called a peacekeeping task force in this country before. The peacekeeping task force, its job is basically to make the connections between all the different levels of peacekeeping forces that are established on the land and soil. So they would be in touch with every county sheriff. They would be in touch with every state assembly militia. They would be in touch with the continental marshals. They would also be in touch with the LEOs, the law enforcement officers in every county, who are there ostensibly working for and regulating the human population and the slaves. And so they would be acting as a networker, so that everybody is kept advised of what everybody else is doing, and they're all trying to work together in a fashion to actually protect the people in their jurisdiction. And it's a very difficult job. It's a very complex job, because in doing this, you inevitably wind up educating everybody as you go. And everybody has to kind of relearn how the American system is designed. And it's difficult. It's difficult to take in for the people that are involved in it, because most of the LEOs, the law enforcement officers, think that they're the only ones out there, and that they're the only ones who have responsibility for public safety and that sort of thing. And that's simply not true. And in fact, our county sheriffs are the highest ranking peacekeeping officers in the country. So when our county sheriff walks in, he's suddenly in a much stronger position than any police captain. And so far as we're concerned, in terms of living people. But there are relatively few living people being recognized, because, as I say, everybody has been hornswoggled into, quote unquote, adopting, without their knowledge or consent, this federal dual citizenship, which denigrates you to the level of a human or a slave. And I want you to think about this in terms of a progression of rights. Living people who are Americans standing in their birthright are owed American common law and American common law courts, which we provide ourselves, and they have natural and unalienable rights. Underneath that, you have people that take titles. That would be persons that have like MD or PhD, or an office, mayor, captain, sergeant, madam, Mrs., Miss, Mr. These are all British titles, okay? And they're all humans. They've stepped away from their capacity as just a living man or woman and assumed an office. They're now part of an administrative structure. They have an office of some kind, and they're acting as a legal person, right? So when they start applying those titles, then you're operating in the human venue, and you have human rights, and then you lose a portion of your inherent natural rights while in that office. And then finally, there is a third version, the slaves, and they have civil rights when and if somebody in Congress decides that they don't have rights. Then they can just take up their pen and or like Donald Trump did, just suspend civil rights. Okay, suddenly the slaves that only have civil rights, right? Equal civil rights. We've heard this all our lives. Equal civil rights, equal civil rights. That's talking about the European slave system. So the slaves were given civil rights because they basically pounded their fists on the table until they got them. But the problem with civil rights is that they're not really rights, they're privileges that can be taken away. Okay, so they took away the civil rights. That's why we had all the big riots in 2020. And they should have been very upset. I would have been upset. We should have been upset because we've all been classed as slaves too. But we have to become aware of this European caste system and how it's been misapplied to us in this country. And we have to become aware of the excuses that have been used for doing this. And they basically latch upon us when we're still babies in our cradles, and they create unconscionable contracts, little registration cards that say that we're U.S. citizens. And so they just, give them an inch, they'll take a mile, give them any excuse to misinterpret something, and they will. And so they take these birth registration cards that they obtain at the hospitals, and they copyright your name. They copyright your given name as if you were a piece of cloth that they can own the copyright to. And by claiming your name, they claim to latch onto you and to create a whole new entity, which is a British subject, a British territorial subject. And then they subject you to their human law, their territorial law, and all you have are human rights. Well, that's not bad enough. That's a huge denigration from your natural state. Then they take your name, which they now have copyrighted, and they create a corporation, a British Crown corporation, operating in your name. And that's where you see the all capital letter name is a corporation that they have created for themselves as a franchise without your knowledge or consent. And they've set up this whole system so that they can pillage and plunder and create this entire fictional artifice that they are going to use and impose on you, just as they did in the colonial days. And if you look at the list of things that the colonists listed in the Declaration of Independence for the reasons why they were effecting this separation from George III, if you go down the list, you'll recognize every single one of those crimes. The same crimes that they were here creating in 1776 are all present with us now. And it's because they're enforcing the same system, the same caste system.
Mm.
And in that, the English were the only ones that were men and women. The colonists were all merely humans. And below the colonists were the slaves, everybody else. So they've done the same damn thing, but this time they've done it illegally and unlawfully. And they've based their claims on unconscionable contracts foisted off without disclosure to the parents and without any ability to be conscious of them for the victim, the baby. And so this is just nothing but commercial wrongdoing and, illegality on a vast scale. And the thing that they've done is already a recognized crime. It's already forbidden under both the Geneva and Hague Conventions. So, any military man telling you that this was a war, number one, tell him to shove it up his rump, because there's no declaration by any Congress, much less the Congress. And number two, there's no peace treaty in place or anything else. No peace process was ever engaged in. All they had was an armistice. So these guys, if they tell you it's a war and that the law of war applies, you just tell them, no, it doesn't. And here's why. And put it back in their lap. Okay, you show us a declaration of war for the Civil War by the correct Congress, and we'll give you a Bronze Star, and they cannot do it. So it wasn't a war. And none of the protections or war, laws of war, any of that, that's all out the window. Forget that. This is just crime. And as crime, it needs to be addressed on an international level. And so that's a good deal of what I do, is to bring forward the crime. To just keep pushing it forward into the consciousness of the world that, hey, look at what these Brits have done. Because it wasn't just here. They pulled this crap here, but they also pulled it on their own people. They also pulled it on the other Commonwealth countries that existed at the time. They pulled this territorial crap, infiltrated and undermined the national governments using their territorial role throughout. And it was just as illegal and unlawful the first time they did it as any other time they did it. So what we're seeing here, they're experiencing in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. They're experiencing here in the United States. They're experiencing it in Canada and Australia. And basically what they're doing is they're trying to they're trying to use the human caste to kill off all the slaves. And after they kill off all the slaves, then they'll have established another ranking of humans, and then they'll pit them together until there's hardly anyone left. And then they think that they're just going to sit here in some sort of utopia of wild nature, at which point I hope the lions, tigers, and bears eat them. But the point being that all of this is illegal as hell. All of it's unlawful as hell. There's no law involved here. This is just criminality run rampant, and our employees are promoting it. So how is it that they're getting our money to destroy us? And the answer is the banks. The banks are the key to all of this, because the banks have been recognizing them as if they were representing us and giving our money and our credit to them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is no. Those are our employees. They cannot claim to represent us when we're standing here right in the front of you, and that's our money.
Well, we would be if we knew that we were the government. We would be. They just think we're all, asleep or dead. Well, we're dead at sea. We're lost at sea, apparently.
Well, the human that was created and named after you is the one that's dead, declared, dead and lost at sea. And that goes back to Henry VIII.
Yeah.
And in that arrangement, the Pope and the King collaborated to set this system up as a means of latching onto your private estate and controlling it and profiting from it. And they decided that they would work together to be able to conscript and do this to Protestants and Catholics alike. So the quid pro quo is that if you're Catholic, the Pope owns you 100%. And if you're Protestant, the king gets 40% as his cut, and the Pope gets 60% of your lifetime estate.
All right, Anna. I didn't want to interrupt anything that you're saying because I started it. You were answering it. It's such a big thing. I just feel like we can never get enough of it. I don't want to make everybody upset by not getting to the questions. So let me put some of these questions up here. Sean says they asked last week. Well, we didn't see it, Sean. So thank you for asking again. Does our status change automatically, make us secured parties or creditors?
It's a good question. It doesn't put your name in the system as a secured party. Okay. But your country as a whole and your state is a secured party. So you are a secured party in that you are a Wisconsinite or a Minnesotan or a, an Ohioan or a New Yorker or a Californian. And we've already proven that that's true. So you're a secured party and creditor as a state national.
Okay. All right. Robert wants to know, as a national, can I claim my fiance for her to come to the country?
I don't think it really makes any difference in terms of entering the country, whether you're a U.S. citizen or a national. It's pretty much the same sort of requirement that the INS has regarding who can immigrate and who can't. Okay. If you marry her, well, then she gets pretty much a free pass to come to the country and be part of everything. But as a fiance, she would have to get a visa and just come here to visit.
Do we pay school taxes, Anna?
Well, this is hard because they tax us for schools, but they don't allow us to control our schools, which are supposed to be completely local.
Yeah.
So this is part of what we need to resolve.
Yeah.
We are the ones that need to assert that we have our own schools. We need to provide ourselves with our own schools. If we don't provide ourselves with our own schools, then they can justly say, well, you're sending your kids to our schools, therefore you have to pay our school taxes.
So we should be incorporating that in our system as we're putting the pillars.
That's a county function. That's a very important county function.
Okay, that's good to know. Lorraine wants to know, do we have a trust? Might we have information on creating a trust? I don't think we need to, but Anna, what would you like to say to her?
The only thing that a living man or woman actually needs as a trust is a last will and testament. And if they have minor children, a provision for who the guardian of the minor child is in the event of the death or disability of the parent. And, you get to choose who your trustees are going to be, and you name your executor and all that stuff in your will. Okay? But people are doing all these other kinds of fancy Dan trusts, and they think that this is going to protect them. And no, it doesn't. I could give you some examples. You really just need to have a last will and testament and a guardian name for any minor children.
Maria wants to know, shouldn't each of us be our own secured party creditor?
Well, everybody's going, secured party creditor, secured party creditor. This is something that Tim Turner brought forward under the Russo movement.
Oh.
And, we all know what a disappointment that was. We are all secured party creditors because we're all Americans, okay? And as our states are the owners of all physical land and stuff within the state is the secured party creditor against the federal usurpers and employees, okay? So we have bonded them, we have liened them, and we have rolled the assets into state trusts. The states are the secured party creditors. We individually then are inheritors of the state. And so it's like, once you start down that road and you start dabbling in commerce, you're putting yourself in danger, because when you are actually taking part in commerce, then they really have something to say, oh, well, obviously you know what you're doing, or you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be dabbling in commerce.
Right.
But you don't know what you're doing in commerce. You don't even know the basic things about commerce. And so even people that have studied these things outside the system for years. People like Winston Trout get in trouble when they dabble in commerce. So I have not taught people to, do this stuff. I've protected them by setting up their state as a secured party creditor and establishing the indemnity bond for the state.
Okay. There's a more education, friends, so we just have to keep, getting that. Lavelle is saying, how will the bondsman collect money since securing the man or woman with insurance is fraud?
No, insurance is a different kind of thing. A court bond is supposed to be paid in real money, right? Not credit.
Got it.
And so it's not an insurance. Insurance is what we have when we are a human and we are trying to insure something like a car or a performance or something of that sort. It's a performance bond. You're guaranteeing that you're going to show up at court. You're guaranteeing that you're not going to go within 100 feet of your ex-wife. This is how bonds work. You are giving your bond. You are raising your hand and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm guaranteeing the court. And if I don't do this, I'm going to lose this much money.
My word is my bond. So it is still that your word is your bond. This was a discussion, and it was pretty confusing. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah. So anyway, that's what you're doing when you're doing a court bond.
Mm-hmm.
And insurance is a different thing. Insurance is legalized gambling, basically. Somebody who's a gambler comes up to you and says, I bet that you won't have a wreck for 5 years. Right. You say, okay, I'll take that bet. and you put your money in the pot there. And if you have a wreck in the next 5 years, well, then you get some money back out.
That is totally a poker game now, isn't it?
Right. It is. It's entirely gambling on future events.
Mm-hmm. All right, Anna, somebody needs to listen to your interview with Benjamin Fulford to learn about the blood oath, SBC, whoever you are. You should listen to, but
let's put this to rest so that people understand it. Because we got millions of Christians who don't understand that they're taking a blood oath every time they take communion.
Yep.
And by far the most common blood oath is the Apostles' Creed. So what happens? You stand there and you recite the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? You all go up to the communion rail and you drink what? The blood of Christ given for you, okay? This is a blood oath. And people need to get that through their heads. I mean, it's so obvious. It's so right in your face. And it is presented to you from the time you're a small child. And yet, I would say a good 90% of Christians don't have any idea what they're doing. They don't realize that they're taking a blood oath and how serious that is, both in terms of their spiritual life and their, actually it affects their legal status also. Because remember, the way that they networked all this stuff together, it doesn't matter whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant, you are owned by the Pope as a slave.
Everybody's Catholic, according to the paperwork. According to the birth certificate, everybody's Catholic.
Yes, absolutely. And they tax you and they use you however they damned well please. And it's because you take a blood oath, SBC. And it's because you continue to accept this without totally unconscionable contract. Again, people, it's just going right over their heads that they have a blood oath on the record. And when they are confirmed, they have it even worse. And so, whether whether the Protestant churches are snapping you up and using you as collateral, or whether the Pope is getting a full 100% instead of only 60% of your value, you're still being bought and sold as a slave of Christ. And you have no concept of this, but this is actually how this works.
Jeff wants to know, what do we need to do to get our notary in place? I think they mean recording secretary.
Well, no, you can have your own public notary. You can establish a public notary as the state, a notary of the state. And basically all this is that you have to establish the office, and you have to have a means of providing the dates of their service. There has to be a term that they're in office, and there has to be a description of what the duties of the notary is. And basically, you have to study up on what a notary is and does before you can actually define what your land jurisdiction notary is going to do.
He also wants to know what is needed for an assembly review from the Federation.
I suspect he means that at the end, when you have your 4 pillars up and functioning, how does an assembly become fully seated? Well, we're going to work with you toward that end. And when you are there and you have everything together, you're going to know, and we're going to know that you're there and that you have everything together. And you're simply going to get to that point, and you're going to say, hey, guys, we don't need our training wheels anymore. We know how this works. Our courts are functioning fine. Our international business assembly is up to speed. Boy, we've got our militia organized. And so it'll be just a matter of everybody kind of shaking hands and saying, there you go. Hit the road, folks. You now know how to drive. And that kind of a thing comes about in a kind of an organic process, because we will know each assembly, we'll know how you're doing, we'll know what questions you're continuing to have, what battles you're fighting. And when that magic moment comes, when you are up and rolling, then you'll be fully seated. And fully seated it doesn't really change. As a General Assembly, you're already fully empowered to make decisions and to give directions to your employees and all that kind of stuff. But when you're fully seated, then you've taken on the responsibilities of the state government.
How many chairs can one woman or man, what one man hold on their assembly?
Well, I wouldn't suggest that anybody try to do more than 2 committees.
Can county general assembly serve on a state general assembly?
Well, we all do. Think about it. The moment that you walk back through the door of your state assembly, you're also living in a county. So your county assembly is getting populated at the same time. So, if you walk through the door of the North Dakota assembly and you're living in, Sauk County, South Dakota, well, then Sauk County is being populated at the same time. And you have a county assembly and you have a state assembly. So you're a member of both the county and the state assembly the moment you come home, because the land and the soil are inextricably connected.
Anna, I shared your Brighteon link. So friends, everybody, look in the chats and find this link. This is a deprogramming video everyone needs to watch that Anna wanted me to share with you. And she's saying to please be aware that the weird stadium clips happened during the London Olympics. So I did put that in there for you, Anna.
not everybody knows this.
Yeah, I know. They don't all get to see all these things. All right. WN person is saying class 5 tax firms such as 1099 referring to HSA, 1099 PATR bank interest. Do we have to file federal and state taxes if we receive these?
Those are questions that I'm not particularly well suited to answer for you. We have a situation here where there's a constant battle to define what's federally connected and what isn't. And what's federal anyway? I mean, we also have that battle. So oftentimes when the IRS is addressing a business issue, they'll be making the argument that a particular clump of money or clump of credit is federally connected, and the person is saying, no, it's not federally connected. The appropriate thing is to look at your entire business. I think the safe way to do it is to look at your entire business and determine whether or not it's federal or not. And then look at these issues like, is this federally connected or not? And I would say that the bank interest is federally connected unless you are working with a private bank. Most people are working with commercial banks. And so as a result, their bank interest does become taxable. But those are individual questions that you kind of have to look at yourself in terms of, how does this work for me? And how much does this amount to anyway? If it's under the standard, what do they call it? The standard deductible. If you have bank interest under the standard deductible, you don't have to report it anyway. So, it's a lot of questioning of, in your particular situation, is it federally connected or not? And how much bank interest.
Got too many assumptions that you have to make, not knowing what the details are. Dennis is saying the Russian Orthodox are not under the Pope since 1054.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the Russian Orthodox. I'm talking about the Eastern Orthodox. When I'm talking about the Orthodox.
What is Anna's book that talks about how to live in the private?
Well, I'm suggesting that you live in the public.
I was going to say, I don't know what that means.
I'm suggesting that you take over your own government and restore it so that you are the public, not them. And then you don't have to worry about all this stuff.
We're not hiding, friends. This isn't a private club. This isn't a secret society. This isn't happening undercover. We're not hiding. We're not hiding.
Well, what he means is, how do you retain your respect as a private living being? It's, how do you run your business affairs in such a way that you're going to be able to hold on to your protections as a living man or woman in this whole situation? And what I'm saying is, to hell with this whole phony, baloney, illegal, unlawful BS situation that we've been handed. These are unconscionable contracts. They're not enforceable. They're not even in the vein of being a private contract because they're unconscionable. It's a contract that you don't even know exists, that's been foisted off on you. And there you are trying to deal with the results of somebody else's delusions and demands upon you. So, the trick here is not to find some newfangled, snaggly way to avoid the conflict. The way through this is to take your own proper place and stand in it and tell them, look, I'm not a federal dual citizen. With respect to you, I'm a foreign sovereign. I am a non-citizen.
Right.
Okay? I'm not here to play your games. I'm not a human. I'm not a slave. I'm a man. And I am owed man's law. And I have my own damned courts. So until and unless I'm actually hurting you, go away. And, this is, people need to kind of get into that mindset that says, no, the buck stops here. We're not playing this game. I'm not in your jurisdiction, and you sure as hell aren't coming over into mine.
Margaret, they took down. Oh, yeah. So, Anna, we were reading one of your articles on our Telegram channel, and it just got deleted while we were talking last Friday. So we created another one, Margaret. And so if you go to the show links and you go to the link tree, then we've updated that. But yeah, we were just talking and they just took us down. So just want you to know, they just
we were reading Anna's articles.
Literally,
that's what we were doing.
Just like this, like a book, just reading it. I was just in the middle of reading, talking, just reading her thing, and all of a sudden I was talking to nobody. I was like, what is going on?
Well, we're having this discussion with the military. And the military wants to make themselves out big fellas because they've taken all this action against the criminals, and they should get applauded for that. However, we've been in this situation since 1863. And the military has been key to promoting and profiting from and creating this whole craziness. So it's not really possible for us to just hide our head under a blanket and say, oh, well, that didn't happen. And they're still confused about the issue of U.S. citizenship. They still think that is the highest level of because that's their level. They think that that's the highest level there is. And they forget that we're not U.S. citizens. They may be U.S. citizens for the time that they're in the service, but we are not U.S. citizens. And so when people are so unaware of their own status, that they're living in a denigrated status, they say things, do things, and assume things that just simply aren't true.
If I tried to create it as the unincorporated United States of America, it wouldn't even let me do it. It wouldn't let me. There were so many things. I was like, oh my gosh.
Another question is, when we get ready to put these elections in the newspaper, are they going to qualify us to have to be registered candidates or registered voters, or do we list that as unincorporated? So there's a specialized this election process that happened to California that we're watching. We're just kind of saying,
how do we get it in the paper, Anna? Because they'll call it propaganda, or that's what we're being.
Look, they didn't stipulate when they published their incorporated offices, did they?
We're just telling you what the actual newspaper is saying to us.
Well, then publish it another way. Publish it by putting up flyers around town. Publish it by publishing your own damn paper. You don't need them.
We're just checking with you
because we just thought we
don't pass the newspaper.
All this obstruction.
The pressure test of the Federation. So we're just like, what is the Federation pressure test for this? Do we just? So I mean, shoot, we could 100% create an online newspaper, whatever you would like. You just tell us, because they're telling us it's propaganda.
No, you just have to show good faith toward the public, which they didn't. And that's part of their problem right now.
They're the ones publishing all the propaganda, and we're trying to publish the truth, and they're telling us that we're trying to publish the propaganda.
Yeah, well, that's people that don't understand who they are and what they're doing. They should have enough sentience left to realize that they're public employees.
Ask the other one, Cynthia. Me and Cynthia, we
Lord.
the whole California thing, and we're like, we're going to find out all the answers. We're going to do
nothing happened in California. California made the decision that they were going to hold elections while they were still in the assembling process. Okay, they made this decision. They were going to, do their officers, and they were going to have that done while they were still assembling. Okay, fine. They go ahead. They do the whole thing. They did it right. They did the announcements. They, did the notice periods. They vetted the candidates. They did the balloting. They conducted the whole thing famously. Got through it with no problem at all. And then this was happening in July. And they're supposed to publish the election results within a month, which I think is a long period of time for publishing election results. That gives you you can look into the results, you can verify everything, you've got a month to do this. And they're supposed to publish the results within a month. And a month went by. 2 months went by. Pretty soon it's 6 months, and these people are functioning in these offices doing this work, but it still hasn't been published. Therefore, the election is still hung.
Oh, got it.
Well,
we're trying to learn so that we're look, when you see somebody who has made an attempt, we're just like, okay. And then we're like, okay, we're going to watch it, and everything that we're doing wrong, we're going to fix it, because, we just want to do a good job. And so we're just paying attention. We just want to make sure we're doing a good job. And so we're just asking for clarity.
Okay, so everything in California was cool, except that they didn't publish their results.
Got it. Hey, we just want to know. We want to know. We want to make sure we do a good job, and we want to share this information with everybody. So, we're all just learning together. And
I would think it would be very obvious that, okay, this is a public institution. This is your actual state government. If you are elected in an office in the state government, you expect, I would think, that that's going to be public knowledge. But somehow or other in California,
we're just toddlers, Anna. We're just toddlers. We're working on it. We're trying to learn.
Anyway, but if it's not obvious, here. It's a public office. It's public knowledge who you are.
Okay.
Just like you know who the mayor of your city is, even though he is not your mayor.
Right.
You have to put these things in public.
Well, these people locally think that we're just making stuff up and that we're doing propaganda. And so it kind of, thank you for just at least giving us the freedom to just make our own newspaper then, okay? Because just like we're doing our own news channel here.
Right.
So everybody across the country, around the world, did y'all hear? Just do it. Look, we got our own media situation right here.
Well, Niti.
Yes, ma'am.
Last night, I was listening to the Ganesha mantra. Just, and it's a very beautiful mantra. It's very famous. It's throughout the world. And I was thinking, when all this stuff went down in India with Mahatma Gandhi, India already fought its war against British territorialism with the support of the entire world against the British Raj. And here we are living under the British Raj. America has been living under the British Raj. Same thing, British territorial government imposed on a national government where the British have not got a leg to stand on. The British did the same thing in India. They did the same thing in South Africa. They did the same thing in Australia. They came back and did it again. They did it in 1860s. That failed. Then they came back to Australia in the early 1900s and pulled it again. So the world has already decided that the British Raj is thumbed down, right? How much more do we need to say or explain to anybody? We are not a territorial government, and we're sure as hell not British. So, come on, people, wake up. And by the way, remember the Tories? Who are the Tories? Oh, they were the British sympathizers that wanted to remain British subjects during the Revolutionary War.
Subjects. They don't realize that that's just subjugating, and that is slavery. It is defined in that word. You know what, Anna? Thank you for pouring power back over us all the time. This is all we need. We just need you to pour the power back over us. We're questioning, and sometimes we're getting stymied because we walk ourselves into a corner, just like the chickens trying to get out you're just trying to put us out the pasture, and we're just getting caught up in the corner over here. It seems silly, but hey, when we've been in there for so long, it's difficult to just walk out. It's kind of scary, walking out into the bright green pasture. It's kind of scary.
Now, well, what was the House of Burgesses, the colonial government?
Mm-hmm.
It was what? It was a territorial government.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the name Tory come from? It comes from British territorial.
Mm.
So what we've got here is the Brits have gone throughout the world, and they've set up these territorial governments, and they've been running their own Raj in each country. They've been running a Raj in Germany. They've been running a Raj in Japan. They've been running a Raj here in the States. They've been running a Raj in Canada. And they've been doing this using corporations. So you've got two foreign corporations, both of them British, one with an affiliation to the Holy Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got two corporations, and they are sitting in the District of Columbia running everything and getting away with it. Because we're not awake, because we're not doing our part, because we're not standing up and running our government. And Mahatma Gandhi in India back in the 1940s said, to hell with this. Where's the Indian government? Okay, and so we had the entire nonviolent non-compliance movement in India. And that's what we have here too, where we're not, we're not shooting people, we're not hanging people, we're not causing harm to anybody. We are exercising our own right to run our own national government. And that is guaranteed to us by the contracts that we hold with these service providers, our employees.
Mm-hmm.
So, they really don't have a leg to stand on or anything to complain about if we choose to exercise our right to restore and run our government. And we are doing that because they've done such a piss poor job of it.
That's right. Dennis is saying your answer on Russian Orthodoxy explains why most of the world is against the Holy Russia.
Well, yes, it does. It also explains why the Russian Orthodox is a different religion in essence than Eastern Orthodoxy or, the Western Roman version. We have a disconnect on the history there.
WN is saying, so do I just claim the 1099s or do I have to claim any income? This person, WN, I don't think you're back on the land and soil. What you need to do is find your state, find your assembly. You need to come back home to the land and soil. This YouTube channel is open to the world. All the people that are coming here and watching this are not necessarily back on the land and soil. So,
right, well, okay, let's if it's true federal income, like you worked for the post office for 20 years and you worked in the private sector for, however many years, then the portion that came from the post office is taxable. The portion that came from private employment is not taxable. So you just do your taxes that way. You pay the taxes on the actual federal income and nothing else. 1099 income. It depends on whether you are a federal citizen and operating as a federal citizen and what the work was and all those other factors as to whether the 1099 counts as income. You're saying they add up to less than the standard deductible. Well, let me give you an example. Most people, my husband included, whoever were in the United States Armed Forces, had federal income during that time period while they were in the military. Okay. 50 years later, a guy gets ready to retire. A tiny, 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 tiny portion of his, if he's worked in the private sector all his life, the rest of his life, a tiny portion of his, Social Security and all that stuff, a tiny portion of it is due to that military service back in 1962, right?
Right.
It's something like, it's less than $200 a year. Okay. It's a ridiculously small sum, but it's federal income, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, instead of having the nuisance of processing millions of claims for such small amounts, which would actually break the IRS, right? They have the standard deductible. And anything under the standard deductible, you don't have to report.
Can a sheriff serve in the General Assembly as a member or officer?
Well, he is an officer of the General Assembly. I mean, just by definition. A sheriff, like everybody else that's elected or serving, is supposed to be a national of his state. So say that you're the sheriff of Macon County in Georgia, okay? Is he potentially a General Assembly juror? Yes. Both for his county and for his state, he can be a General Assembly member and he can be a juror so long as he is not involved in the case. And of course, in most county cases and everything, he's going to be the presiding officer, so he's not allowed to sit on the jury of a case that he's bringing forward. You have to observe common sense and conflict of interest. But there's nothing that keeps a sheriff from serving on a jury for an unrelated matter in a different jurisdiction like the state. Say that the state is bringing a suit against somebody and it's in a different county. Could the sheriff be called as a talesman? Yes, he could.
If you try to press a lawful claim in these C jurisdiction courts and they railroad you and deny your filing, what course of action is next?
You go down to your local state police, whether you call them troopers or whatever you call the state police in your area, and you file a criminal charge. You accuse them of impersonation and alienation of political status, and you describe exactly what they're doing. And you make that part of a criminal complaint against the officer that's doing it and against the court that's doing it.
I think Neva's just saying, can we post on a town bulletin board? And also another question I have is, so basically we can make a news section on our website as a news post and then it would be published.
Well, that's part of publishing, but when it comes to publishing in public, that you have to go beyond your own little resources. You have to, actually put it out there on bulletin boards. You have to hand it out. You have to have a news distribution effort. so that everybody knows. You don't want to have a situation where people don't know where to get help or get services.
Got it. WN, what state are you on?
Alaska? And Alaska is a state as of the 1st of October 2020. It's been enrolled as a state of the union.
WN is saying my assembly does not have answers. He's asking, this person's asking, I'm saying he, I don't even know if it's a guy or girl, but whoever it is, they're asking all these questions, like, about the 1099s and all these other things. I'm wanting to know
that. Well, we're not tax experts about federal taxes because we're not federal persons.
Right. But this person, yeah, so they must be just keep asking.
If you want to know about federal law and federal agencies and federal taxes, then go ask the federales. We're not federales. We're not involved in that. Only about 8% of federal laws apply to us, and they only apply to us if we actually purposefully, knowingly, voluntarily engage in activities that are federally regulated or enter federally owned property to conduct business. So, this is not something that we're expert in. It's foreign law. It's foreign stuff. And if you're engaged in a federal job, then it's up to you to learn the federal way of doing things. We are not teaching federal law here.
Yeah. You need a tax attorney. That's what your problem is. All right, Nicole. Can the oversight committee members still operate without an ombudsman or chair?
You should have a chair elected within, say 3 days of the oversight committee chairman standing down.
Okay. Well, Anna, we went over time. You did it. You've been through everything. The only people these people keep asking me about, and I am not going to ask these every single week, but I will ask it this one last time because I have to keep putting people in bans and timeouts because they won't stop talking about, when are we getting the prosperity cards? I'm not asking that question every single week. I am not asking that question every single week. Stop putting it in the chat. I'm going to start putting you in a timeout. When the banks are ready, when the system is working, then we're going to have things. Until it is working, you will not have the things. Anna, do you have anything to say about that in addition to that?
We had everything worked out and we were all set to, push the button. And the military came in and said, oh no, only U.S. citizens can have restitution.
Wow.
To which I said, bullshit. And, that we have had this ongoing conversation about, what is a U.S. citizen and who is owed the restitution. And it sure as hell isn't the people that caused the problem. If you want to come back home after your tour of duty and claim your actual birthright status as a man or a woman and get back your birthright inheritance, good on you. I will applaud your service and I will honor your birthright. But don't tell me that I have to accept the status of British subject to get restitution that's owed me as an American.
Mm-hmm. So, friends watching, every single week when you ask a bank question, I am going to intentionally and deliberately ignore you because Anna is over here on the front lines fighting for us every moment of the day. If you believe even for a moment that she is not interested in you having your financial sovereignty, then you don't really understand what it is that she's having to fight against just to get the money and everything to work. And she's not going to put something out there that isn't going to work. What good is it going to do if you get this stuff and then you can't use it? Then what's the good of that? So
right, we have to have the connectivity, and we are even exploring the possibility of having a connection to BRICS. We're exploring all the different possibilities that are out there so that our people can gain access to what they are owed and not have to kowtow to any British bullcrap at all. We settled this all a long time ago, and their Raj system is known to be illegal, immoral, and unlawful. So they can just take their Raj system and shove it. And, the whole thing was Mahatma Gandhi demonstrated to the world what these people were doing back in 1948. And we all stood up and cheered as the Indian people took over the control of the Indian government. Oh, what a thought. Well, here we are. We're taking control of our American government and operating it the way it's supposed to be, as opposed to a British Raj territorial government, which has no right to be here. Now, these bastards have got to be caught. What they're doing has to be recognized for what it is. And then we all have to stand up and say, no, no. Just as Mahatma Gandhi said no in India, we have to say no to the British Raj acting as jackboots in our country. Yeah. And everybody worldwide needs to know what these vermin have done and how they've used lies and guile and unconscionable contracts and unilateral contracts and all other sorts of illegal bullshit to try to foist this off onto the American people. And that includes the people in our military. They've been victims just as much as everybody else. They've been unknowingly acting as commercial mercenaries, cheap commercial mercenaries, since 1863. Now, it's about time we all got our heads wrapped around this and got our butts in gear and straightened this out and kicked the limeys back across the pond where they belong and let them enjoy their system of caste and clan and everything all they want. If they want to suck up to the Prince Charles's ruinous ass, they are welcome to it. But not here. They're not going to force that on us again. No, 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 no. And the fact that they've been doing it successfully behind our backs for a long time doesn't matter.
You hear that, Cynthia? They got Anna all riled up. You guys have no idea how this woman is fighting for us to have that financial sovereignty. You have no idea what she's doing. You need to know that she is. Did you just not hear her?
She put out 6 articles in one day. And if you're not reading them, you're not keeping up. These questions can simply be answered if you're reading the articles and you're following. And go back through some of the old ones. There's information there too as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have a website.
Why does anybody think that Anna is trying to stand between you and your prosperity when who is the other person in the world who is doing anything at all to fight for this? Who is that other person? Where are they? Where are they? Anna is out there trying to find financial sovereignty. No one else has said this even once. No one else dare talk about it. Don't bring this question here every single week. She wants
Nobody's standing between you and your prosperity. You wouldn't have a claim. You would not have any prosperity coming to you if we had not put in our claims for everybody.
Yeah. You know what? I put a bunch of y'all in timeout and even banned some people for this. And the reason I'm doing it is because you have no shame. This person is working so hard. It really upsets me, Anna, that you're doing all this work on behalf of people. They don't understand. You don't sleep because you got to keep your phone on because of all the international trespasses.
Yeah, well, they don't understand. They think that they've got this entitlement idea that, I'm owed this, I'm owed this. Well, you are owed it, but you wouldn't have it if it weren't for me. Okay, no. Let's just be blunt. If I hadn't done what I did way back when, and if my husband hadn't done what he did way back when, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have a claim.
Mm-mm.
You'd just be a human. You'd be a public servant, an indentured servant, or you'd be a slave. And those would be your options. You would not be a landlord. You would not have any right to your land. You would not have any right to your own money. You would be just shit out of luck.
Right.
So this is the only horse to ride you back to where you belong, and you'd better figure it out soon. And nobody can do it for you but you. You have to put in the time and the effort to figure out, number one, who you are, what your government is supposed to be, how to restore your government, how to get your money back, how to get your land back out of the British National Trust. I mean, come on. These people have gulled and taken advantage of us in every way possible for so long. And you've become like the Stockholm Syndrome. You've become enamored of your jailer. This is the British government at its very worst. What they've done here is the biggest snow job and the biggest fraud operation. It's a sting. It's a fraud. And we've all been taken in by it. But we have proven that it's a fraud. It's all based on fraud.
Yeah. This is a quick question, Anna. Is there no assembly committee if nobody steps forward to chair the committee, even if there are members willing to participate, just not lead?
Well, you need to find somebody who's got guts enough to chair the committee simply so that there's a spokesperson for the committee. Otherwise, you're just kind of rolling around and around and around.
Well, you know what, Anna, this is interesting. Me and Michelle Ford have had several conversations. So everybody wants to here's something else that's crazy. So in order to get organized, you have to have someone leading. And these folks believe that there is we're not talking about authority out there, friends. We're not talking about authority top down, but you do have to have an organizer. Because
you have to have a structure. You have to do.
Anna, they think that if you're self-governing, there's no order. If you're self-governing, there's no order. If you're self-governing, so like if I'm putting them in a timeout over here, then they don't like it. I don't really care because there has to be an order. I'm not going to bombard Anna, who I know what Anna's doing. I know the work that she's doing. I'm not sure why y'all don't know that, but I am going to guard her from all of that because it is my job. It is my job as a responsible journalist to do that. If you guys don't like it, I'm not seeking your agreement. I'm not seeking your agreement, and I want you to know that and hear me now. I am going to guard Anna.
Well, there are rules of discourse. You know, what good does it do to have 50 people all going hey, at once? Then nobody gets answered.
No, but like if you're like in this situation, in our committees, we have to have someone who is in the end responsible for the communication.
Right.
That's how you're
an assembly. That's why you have an assembly committee chairman to bring the information and the considerations of the committees, the investigations and doings of the committee back to the General Assembly. If you don't have an assembly chairman, you don't have somebody who can represent that committee in the business forum of the assembly in general. So, yes, you do have to find an assembly chair, someone to chair that committee. Someone who will take the responsibility of reporting back to the General Assembly what the committee has found. Right. And oftentimes the committee will be engaged in research. They'll be looking into some particular thing for the entire body as a whole. So yes, you do need to have someone who can act as the chairman of that committee and go back to the General Assembly and give a report.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice. Yes. You know what it is? All the coordinators are having to deal with this situation as well. And you you outline this beautifully on the coordinator training on Thursday, that, friends, this is a thankless position. Anybody who's trying to lead and get organized, this is a problem, because everyone who is operating in their sovereignty feels like they don't need to respect and honor the order. Guess what, friends? Nature has an order. If you get to the end of the cliff, gravity is going to pull you down, and nature has no grace.
Well, we have committees. That's our structure, and we function by committee. And as a whole, in the end, the General Assembly is just a giant committee of the whole. And that's always been the form of our government. Since the very, very first, even the colonial government was structured on committees. So what we do is a little different. We don't have CEOs. We don't have vice presidents of this and that. We don't have directors and department heads. But what we do have is we have committees. And those committees are assigned to do certain functions and investigate certain issues and to recommend certain actions that have to do with their committee's subject matter. And that's how we organize things.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have an ombudsman committee, but you don't have an ombudsman, then it becomes the work of the committee to find an ombudsman and to get that work done.
Do you have anything in response to this?
Certainly, a committee can self-organize, but they don't have a voice. You have to have a chair of the committee to have a voice. I'm trying to get this through your head. That you as a committee, all 50 of you, eventually or more, are not going to go to the assembly meeting and start talking in one group all about how your committee did this. You're going to have a spokesman. You have to have a spokesman. No. You're giving authority to the chair that the chair doesn't have. You're getting confused with that system, not our system. A committee chair is a spokesperson. I keep saying this about the assembly chairman also. Our people, our leaders are not sitting there top down controlling the committee. And if they are, then you tell them, no, that's not how this works. You're here to act as a spokesperson for the committee, taking our reports back to the General Assembly. You're not here to tell us what to think. You're not here to make our lives miserable or denigrate us in any way. You're just here among all the other people trying to get a job done. And anybody who has delusions of executorship or CEO status in a committee needs to be told that. It's a different role. It's a different government, and a committee chairman is a different role than what they are obviously assuming. So the rest of you just have to be educated enough to say, no, when we elected you to be the committee chairperson, you acquired the duty of making our report to the General Assembly. That's it.
All right. Well, for all of the people out there who I just hurt your feelings, I'm really sorry. Also, I'm being honest. I'm not angry. I don't get angry. I'm not worried about it. I just think that there's a lot of nerve that people have. You guys are out in public, and you are in public right now. So behave. And we're very clear about behaving. If we were all in person somewhere somewhere together having a conversation, the things that you guys say in this chat, you wouldn't have the nerve to say. If you wouldn't say this out loud to my face, if we were standing somewhere, then don't put it here. This is the problem with the chatting, is that people act like they can just say anything that they want to say. If you're not willing to say that in person, I addressed it because it was so prevalent in the chat. Otherwise, I normally don't really do that. And Anna and Cynthia and anybody who's been watching all the recordings that we have, and you could go back and see every recording. I've never said anything. But I said it today because it was so prevalent. And you know.
Well, everybody has their assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And assumptions are worth nothing.
Right.
People assume that it's easy to just set up an entirely new banking system. People assume that it's easy to create credit cards for that new banking system. Why don't they try doing it? Why don't you just, you don't like the job I'm doing, you don't like the work that our IT team has devoted, years of work to. Why don't you just go out there and see if you can set up a new banking system for America?
Mm-hmm.
And be my guest. See if you get there any faster than we have.
Anna, y'all, you have thought about things that no one has ever thought of. And praise you. We're praising you. I'm praising you because Anna has thought, friends, about how to use cards that are going to convert currency internationally on the minute with gold, being gold backed. The security in this type of financial system that she's creating, you can't even fathom.
Right. And in our system, here are the other advantages that are offered by our system. You don't have to worry about your deposits just disappearing because the bank stole them.
Ooh.
When you put money in your bank account, it's yours. If you read the fine print of all the bank accounts out there right now, you'll see that the bank owns your deposits. So I'm asking you, why would you even want to put your money in a bank that has said right out front that they own your deposits and that anything you deposit with them is theirs?
That's right. All right, everybody. We love you. It is the reason that we speak the truth. I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to continue to speak the truth, and the truth might be belligerent. And if it's pinching you, I'm sorry. There's great love here for you. And we're going to see you guys next Tuesday.
Have a great one.